Okay, started. Call the meeting to order. First to do is a pledge of allegiance. You want to lead it, Pat?
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a roll call that's in order. Okay. All right.
Present.
You got any board announcements? No. Department announcements.
Yeah, I'd just like to take a moment and thank new planning permit technician Julie Hirsch for the way she's coming along in our department and learning so many new systems. And also, I tasked her with having uniform name identification tablets in front of each of you for those who had been with the cardboard paper variety for all too long. And so we're a little refreshed on some of our signage. And thank you very much, Julie, for your help in that and even learning this job.
All right. So next is welcome everybody to the meeting tonight. And this is the time for your participation. If you'd like to, you can speak to anything that's not on the agenda. Anybody interested in speaking to the public comment? Okay, move along. Approval of the consent agenda. Acknowledgement of the public hearing. Acknowledgement of the certificate of posting. Do you have to make a motion on that, or just?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no comments, I will move to approve the consent calendar.
Second that.
Okay.
Was that inclusive
All right.
of the minutes?
This is the regular agenda. That's for continuance. This is for map TSM 17-103.
Through the chair, excuse me, I'm sorry. Was the meeting minutes of April 18th were there on the consent calendar, and was that an acceptance of them in body as they are presented?
He did announce that.
Oh, thank you very much.
I just want to make sure that there was a vote on moving the consent agenda and approving it.
Yep. Just
I didn't hear you.
I believe that there was a motion to approve the consent calendar,
Yes.
but there was not a vote.
Oh, all right. So we have a motion to approve. We got a second?
Yeah, I was the
The
second.
second is okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So passed. Okay. Moving on. Back to the regular agenda. And for vesting map subdivision, TSM 17-103. Staff's going to talk to that?
yes, thank you, Chair. Assistant Planner Rich Felsing will be giving the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Chair Tognazini and fellow commissioners. So we have two minor subdivisions today in two very different contexts. One very in close proximity to the Hollister, and the other one out on School Road in a more remote and rural area. The first we'll look at is minor subdivision 1235-16, also known as PLH LLC.
A point of order. Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're on item 2. Q's on item 2. We're on item 1.
Yes.
Okay, is that correct?
That's correct.
So we
are
should
on
be
item
looking
one.
at a continuation of the first element. Request for continuance to June 20th, 2017, map 17-103. Am I not correct, legal
Yes.
counsel? Everyone cool? Okay. Thank you.
My mistake.
So who's going to talk to that one?
All right, so the recommendation on item number 1 is the continuation of the Fairview Corners subdivision so that staff can work with the applicant and our public safety agencies to present a revised map on the meeting in June. So staff's request is to meet at the next regular hearing of the Planning Commission in June for Fairview Corners.
Do we have any speaker cards?
We do have a speaker card. Mr. Lee, who is a neighbor to the property, wishes to speak to the matter.
So the staff presentation's done.
Staff presentation is done.
Okay.
Staff recommends continuance to
Right.
the regular Planning Commission meeting of June.
Open a public hearing.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bill Lee. I spoke on this 2 months ago, and the main reason why I want to speak tonight, I realize we're not here to debate the whole thing. They're requesting continuance to June 20th. I have a business trip to China planned and won't be available that day to be here. And while I realize I can send a representative, I generally do self-advocate on this kind of thing. The issue they're still trying to resolve is the issue that I'm speaking to and I spoke to, and that is the issue of connectivity. Their 60-acre parcel, I'm the 40 acres to the north. They only have one road in and out, which is an issue with the fire code, amongst other things, and they're looking for a second way. I sent a letter. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to read it, but basically, I'm willing to cooperate with them. I'm willing to be that second access that is needed and required by Charlie Badola. And so for this reason, I'm asking if we could have any other date besides the June 20th. That week, I'm just in another continent, whether it's a July meeting or another June meeting or any other date if that's possible. So that's the main reason why I wanted to speak before you set it to the June 20th meeting. If you could set it to any other meeting, I can definitely be here and advocate as appropriate at that time. Any questions? Thank you for your consideration.
Any other public comments? We'll close the public hearing and come back to the commission.
There are only 5 adjacent neighbors to this project. There's 2 back in Harbor, and there's 3 along the north boundary and in Fairview. Well, and if you count Gavilan, I think it would be good to have the elements that want to be there. So I would be okay with moving this to the July meeting, the July 18th meeting, if that's okay with staff.
I do know the applicant and the project planner are hoping to have it ripe with a revised exhibit for you to act upon by June 20th, but it's within your prerogative to assign when this would be continued to. And I think it'd be fair that we, whether June or another date, that we do an active notice mailed to the property owners as well as the newspaper.
So did you make a motion?
No, I'm waiting for other discussion. If there's
Okay.
no other discussion, then yeah, I'll motion it. Any other discussion?
Continue to July meeting.
So yeah, I'd like to continue this to July 18th, 6 p.m. meeting.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, next one, minor subdivision, 1235-16. Staff.
Thank you, Chair
Take it away,
John
Richard.
Mazzini and fellow commissioners. Again, we have 2 minor subdivisions this evening, one close to Hollister and the other one more remote. Minor subdivision 1235-16 is familiar, likely to be familiar to people here because of the previous minor subdivision that created the subject lot that you see in yellow here. And in this slide, you can see the context with Buena Vista Road in red right below the tip of the flag stem there. And agricultural use is maintained toward the north of the property, and similar size lots, either meeting the 5 acres required as a minimum lot size in the AP zoning district, and otherwise agricultural use is predominating north of Buena Vista in the remaining agricultural district.
Richard, can I stop and ask a question
Yes, sir.
since you have the map up?
Yes, sir.
This looks very much like a flag lot, which we do not encourage, but it looks like the bottom pole of the flag is wider than normal, so would that make it acceptable as a flag lot, or?
We try not to create flag lots, but we have ended up with this one. And so my sense is our sense is, where do we go from here? The previous minor subdivision created the two lots, they're about 4.9 acres. I don't know if you can see right below the main body there. I don't know if you can see my cursor there. And so that happened in 2014.
Yeah.
And so we're inheriting the situation to a degree.
Yeah, we were here.
Right. So, and I wasn't, but is there a specific issue that I can address directly?
No, it's just because I know that we're trying to stop flag lots. And I looked at this and I saw the driveway. I drove out there and you see the driveway stub and everything. It looks like if there was a blockage of the roadway in this case, that they would still be able to get a fire truck around the blockage or whatever because of the width of the bottom part of that roadway. It's almost like 3 single lanes if you were to stack them. So I'm assuming because of that, this would be okay to approve because the deal about flag lots is blocking the bottom part of the subdivision, right?
Right, and I think it's a fairly healthy, robust road. It's well constructed, even if it could use some dressing up, maybe. You'll notice in one of the photos that's upcoming, and I can forward to that right away. There's some. So on the right, in this photo, you see the house next at that little notch in the bottom of the flagpole, then the driveway, and then these 4 utility poles. And I'm pretty sure you could fit a fire truck through that, and the road will definitely support heavy vehicles. I think it was made to bring in the solar equipment and stanchions and things. But that should be watched carefully, I think, as going forward.
Okay. So you as a planner would say, you would advise that it'd be okay to continue on with this flag lot?
I think so, taking into account the proximity of those particular utility poles that you see right there, and also the proximity of the home next to it. But at the same time, I do know from speaking with the woman who lives in that house that you see to the right there, the farmers or agriculturists who cultivate this lot right here to the right, they don't use the access road that abuts Buena Vista directly onto their green parcel there that you see just to the east of the flagstem. They actually use the road that you just saw and come around to the left of that house. And I don't know why that is exactly, but they can bring in their agricultural equipment there just fine, width-wise or weight-wise, I think.
Least path of resistance.
Right, I think that's probably it.
Yeah.
So.
And is that Judy down there in the house?
It sounds familiar, but it's been a while since I spoke with her.
Okay.
She came into the office.
I think she was in when we did the original solar thing. Okay.
So through the chair, though, and Commissioner Pierce, I think you're still describing the project as you're going in before we get to some points of analyses, and so maybe through the chair I'll let you continue with your presentation.
Yeah, please continue.
So just the general context of the district here, you can see the agricultural uses from this aerial view, and the context of the major highways, Buena Vista, and the sphere of influence that's directly to the south. And the sphere of influence follows the city limits, and then off to the east, just out of sight here, you can kind of see where it begins. I've got a better map at the end, but right here it starts to rise above Buena Vista at that corner. But this lot is out of the sphere of influence. So that is the road that you were speaking of, directly going straight back. And the agricultural activity on the side is actually cultivated over the property line directly along the road, which is several meters away from the property line. So it's between and behind 1750 and 1850 Buena Vista Road, 29.17 acre flag lot. and they're subdividing it into 3 parcels, one of which will contain the solar farm on about 18 acres, and the other 2 would would not be occupied at this point, but are intended as future home sites. And I did speak with the applicant's point of contact today, and that is the direction he intends to go forward on at this juncture. So the proposed uses that would occur there are consistent with agricultural productive, AP zoning, both in lot size but also in the intended use. AP agriculture, the agriculture zone and AP are both allow necessary public utilities, agricultural supportive uses, and home sites on 5 acres or more. So there's some site history that goes with this. As we mentioned, the previous minor subdivision was approved in May of 2014. That's MS 1233-13. It split a nearly 40-acre parcel into the 2 5-acre parcels that are currently right along Buena Vista there. This house was existing before the split, and this one remains vacant or not. I think it's in either light hay production or just an empty grass field, vacant, if you will, in the more urban sense of the term. In this, and hopefully you got the hard copies of the site map. It doesn't reproduce well electronically, so we wanted to get you hard copies. And what we see is the 2 old ones here, the 2 older or previously created parcels. They were created at 5 acres, but by dedication to right-of-way, I think they are reduced to 4 point something. And these 2 are the 2 lots that we created off the 10.35 remaining currently vacant acreage after splitting off the solar farm onto an 18.8 acre site. Now, again, the driveway. Now, when this minor subdivision was undertaken, of course, people are concerned about, the CEQA analysis or the environmental impact of taking a 40-acre parcel out of agricultural production and what the environmental impact of a large solar farm would be. And so they conducted a CEQA analysis that included an initial study and a mitigated negative declaration that was quite extensive. So currently, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute, but currently we're looking at some CEQA determinations that CEQA doesn't apply according to 15061B3. There's a general rule. We'd like to rely on 15315 minor land divisions, but we can't quite justify that because it's not fully in an urbanized zone. The urbanized zone is, the sphere of influence is below, the city limits are south. And even though development is creeping or continuing up north of Buena Vista, it's just not fully within an urbanized context as of yet, as you can see from the ag district it's in. But nonetheless, so although we'd like to rely on the minor subdivisions, we're defaulting to one that's similar in 15061B3. But if we go a little further, there to full build out, now we've got one large flag parcel with about 10.35 acres of empty or vacant land. And then we're going to end up with 3 with two parcels. So while I wrote +1 to represent the if you could build on the current flag lot, including the solar farm, and we're not going to assess whether that's possible, but adding to that, you would adding 1 parcel or 2 home sites that, let me back up slightly and rephrase that. We've really got +2 buildable sites. Since we didn't have a buildable site before, we had 10 vacant acres on the large flag lot. But we really got +2, so I need to correct that in this slide presentation. But we feel that's covered under new construction or conversion of small structures, which would make it categorically exempt. And so 15303A, the new construction or conversion of small structures, Section A allows one single-family residence or a second dwelling unit. And but 15303, interestingly, allows a duplex. Section B allows a duplex as being categorically exempt. However, if we leave that question aside for a moment, this is really moot because in 2014, the previous minor subdivision, as mentioned, conducted a full-scale, full-blown initial study and arrived at a determination of mitigated negative declaration. And so here's a little bit more information about that. So that analysis would have had to look at a reasonable foreseeable outcome under the current zoning, theoretical, whether someone intended to build there or not. It would have included a full analysis of the future build-out and cumulative impact. It would have taken it while it split off these two lots here along Buena Vista, right here, in that process, it would have had to analyze taking the entire lot out of agriculture, the impact of using that entire lot for something new and something different, including building the solar facility, and including the future split of the 10.35 acres that we're looking at today. So they took into account that sometime in the future, someone was going to come along and want to develop those two lots, and today's that day. We're here, and we're looking at splitting the flag lot into three parcels. So this analysis in 2014 looked at, there we go. So this is a big list of the chapters that such an analysis is required to look at or assess or analyze. So aesthetics, agriculture, air quality, biological resources, and there is a chapter. I've got a copy of it with me. So if anybody would like to see it.
Thank you, Mr. Felsing. I think you very well supported your CEQA recommendation.
All right. So ultimately, they arrived at a determination that it will not have a significant effect because of the mitigation measures that were undertaken at that time. And it was approved as such. And so the staff is recommending that we approve, at the Planning Commission, approve minor subdivision MS 1235-16 with the draft resolution findings and standard and special conditions of approval consistent with the general plan and zoning and the CEQA findings. We do have two additional standard conditions of approval to be included, addressing parkland dedication and easements for common areas, because we want to make sure, since the applicant is actually in Minnesota, we want to make sure that we're providing these at the appropriate time. And so, of course, that's up to the Planning Commission to include or not include. And this is just a little closer shot of the actual sphere of influence here and the way it runs along Buena Vista and then cuts south a little bit here. And this is, of course, the city limits as well run like this.
Mr. Felsing, if I, through the chair, may I supplement the presentation a little? May I just confirm, Mr. Felsing, that you've included in the resolution approval the recitals, the history, the findings and evidence, and also the conditions of approval, and you've brought forward some conditions of approval from the previous map that have not been implemented as yet, and that you're kind of holding holding the property owner to task, such as the frontage improvements along Buena Vista. That's written and incorporated in your draft resolution that you're asking the Planning Commission to act on today. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The past subdivision created a set of conditions of approval, not all of which have been finished or met, and the most obvious of which is the street improvements along Buena Vista. In the ensuing couple of years, more developments occurred. The road has become close to being finished. And I spoke with the applicant, the point of contact today, and he confirmed that he's aware that they have posted $593,000 in cash bond since this was approved for the purpose of paying for the road improvements, and that runs across the entire frontage of the original subdivision, all the way across from there to there. So he's aware of that. Yeah. We would hold him to that. There's several other related conditions, but we've got a list. We included it in the resolution and attachments.
Yeah, so that demonstrates to the Planning Commission and to the public that we still have the financial leverage to insist that these improvements get made at this time prior to recordation of this one lot into three.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Confirm that.
And did that conclude your recommendation to the Planning Commission?
That does conclude my recommendation to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Any questions of the commission?
I have a question. What guarantees do we have that they're going to make all the improvements? Last time they had a year to implement, and it's been 4 years.
Right. Our guarantee is the cash bond for starters. I verbally confirmed with him that would take place, that we wanted that to be completed, and he was more than willing to, but I think at this juncture we have more than enough history to be able to give him a time frame to start, and if it doesn't happen, if it isn't commencing, then the county can make those improvements and then refund the remaining finance money to the applicant if they don't take action. Because this time, I think there's no real holdback. There's nothing left to. They're not going to come back for another bite at the apple or another subdivision at this juncture. So we can make our point, and we can make it as a condition of this approval, or do it ourselves. So.
Now, if we make this approval, is it going to happen within a year? For sure? And he had to sign an agreement once.
And didn't follow through.
And didn't follow through. He signed the agreement back in July of 2014.
So...
The parcel map approval, unless you give it a particular year, already has a 2-year lifespan under the MAP Act. The commission, even right here, could say 3 years. I'm not quite sure we can ratchet it down to 1. Is that within their prerogative, council, to ensure that they satisfy all the conditions necessary prior to recordation of the map, including the installation of $500,000 in frontage improvements in 1 year's time?
No. So the life of the map is for 2 years. That's pursuant to our county ordinance as well as state law. So that is when it is available to be live, and then they could come back and request a extension of time for it. Now, if you want to make it a condition of approval, there would have to be a nexus to the reason why requiring those improvements be made within that year. Now, with regard to actually getting what they want, which ultimately is to have 3 legal parcels, if they do not fulfill the requirements and obligations under the conditions of approval, then the county is not obligated to record those 3 legal parcels.
So, council, that would be subject to? So subject to the recordation would be subject to the conditions that were supposed to be met on the first map?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. And those
Essentially.
have been incorporated into the current conditions of approval.
Yeah, either you do this or you don't get this.
It's his incentive. It's the applicant's incentive to get it done because he doesn't get brand new real estate until the conditions are satisfied.
Okay. Thank you.
The reason I'm kind of pushing that gets done is every time we defer, they never get done.
Well, and to the extent that somebody decides that they want to abandon their project, they can also do that as well and decide to not make those improvements and to not get the benefit of what their application is for, in this case being to have 3 legal parcels.
But the will have the right to put the improvements in from the first approval.
We're talking about the original
Approval, yes.
subdivision, which is unrelated to the current owners. That would go then to the original, and I don't know the number on it, for the minor subdivision. Perhaps Rich can say what the original subdivision was, or minor subdivision creating.
Minor subdivision was 1233-13.
Yeah, from
Yes.
2014, the one that was approved in 2014, that does, as I understand it, have the conditions of approval for certain frontage improvements.
Correct. Okay.
Other questions?
No,
So, just as a side note, this may help navigate this, but you see the receipt for the $593,000 in front of you. This is put forth by Alco, which is related to, if you can read the receipt below, Alco Financed Limited and Ecos Energy. So the solar farm, the owners of the solar farm put up the bond, the cash bond, and the owners of the solar farm are also applicants for both minor subdivisions. So.
Okay. No more questions?
Yes, I was,
Okay.
Chairman, this flag lot, the smaller, longer lot there that says it's 5.35 acres. Now, that goes down the flagpole, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you've got this road that's going along that side,
Right here.
and then there's another road that it seems to be an easement there between parcel 1 and its leg that goes over into that parcel number 2. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. So this chart is a little bit difficult to interpret at first until I looked really, really close at a hard copy like the one you have. And so what you're seeing is they're showing the existing access driveway.
Right.
And then right next to it, there's, I believe, a 15-foot public utilities easement right here. Mm-hmm. So this easement here that creates the access, it's basically an access driveway across parcel 1, mm-hmm. which is here, to parcel 2. So parcel 2 accesses by this easement, which leads to this existing driveway right here.
So does parcel 2 not have an easement onto the existing road? Is that a road? Is that a road?
Mm-hmm. This would be the easement onto the existing road that it provides access from for parcel 2 to Buena Vista.
So that's not a road that divides it, the solar panels? No, those are not solar panels. All those little circles?
The circles?
Yeah, what is that? You've got
the-
solar
the-
panels are in parcel number 3, correct?
Right, yes,
And
ma'am.
parcel number 3 has nearly 9 acres apiece.
Parcel 3 is the one that my cursor's on right here.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all solar panels. That's what
Right.
the graphics are supposed to represent.
Okay, above that, in the middle of the page, that
there?
long line,
Yeah.
there's no road that goes down all those properties? Is
There-
that not an existing road? I mean, what it appears to be?
There are several things going on there, and your hard copy is as good as a map that we have unless we look at the giant plans. So here, there are some circles that run right about from here to right about here. That represents a large orchard to the left that I think it's
okay.
this way. So that's a large orchard. There is a gas line easement that runs the entire length of this to this facility right here.
Okay, so that's not a road.
There might, I suspect that the easement includes transportation access to monitor or repair the facility at the end of the corner here.
And does parcel number 2 have access to that for emergency?
I kind of doubt it, but I would have to just inquire and confirm with either the applicant's consultant or the applicant's engineer is MH Engineering, or the applicant himself. But I personally
it's not a proposed access point for that parcel, and no easements for ingress or egress have been disclosed or desired. It's mainly the little trot down, which is to the east, to get to the existing service road so that it can get back to Buena Vista.
Right.
And I think the divider between the solar panel displays probably just also, wiring cable and, vehicle access to service the solar farm.
And that long flag pole area is not buildable?
This area right here.
Yeah.
It may be, but I suspect it wouldn't be recommended or ideal. It's pretty narrow right in through here when you add in the distance from the property line to the road and the road width and then the public utilities width. So I think what we're looking at is someone who realized that given that tightness, the optimal place to site a home would be back in the thicker portion.
And I'd also like to state that for the record, our zoning code, if one is proposing an accessory structure in the front yard, they need a little special plan review or dispensation from the county. I forget if it's staff or planning commission level to see if that's reasonable for the accessory structures up front of the house like that. So I would say, Commissioner Englund, that it is pretty constrained for structures. It might be a nice garden or vines or...
Yeah, it's just kind of unusual. Okay. But that's all been taken into consideration and the parties are happy. Is that what I'm hearing?
I believe so. They've met the minimum lot size of 5 acres, and they are constrained by the shape of the property boundaries that form the shape of the flag lot, constrain their options in terms of shaping this particular parcel. Mm-hmm. And that's the one inconsistency, if you will. They're meeting the 5-acre minimum lot size on both parcels 1 and 2, constrained by the property boundaries of the flag lot. There's a 3-to-1 depth to width ratio that's also required so we have some uniformity in our parcels across many of these districts. And they're not quite meeting that one in this case. And I would say that's the one anomaly in this entire proposal, is just that it's not at a 3-to-1 or appropriate depth to width ratio. However, as noted in the staff report, the Planning Commission has the power, and I've included the code citations. I think Section A says if it's constrained by the property boundaries, you can make a decision to approve it and to waive the 3-to-1 depth to width lot ratio for shape, but especially if the lot still contains a buildable lot. And it appears that it is meeting setbacks in that thicker portion. So they found a site within this somewhat lengthy 5-acre lot to site, a home. So it's meeting the requirement that it contains a buildable lot and meets setbacks that enable the Planning Commission to waive the 3-to-1 lot ratio requirement and approve it. Those are the two requirements the property boundaries constrain their options, and number two, it contains a buildable lot, and we've determined that it has met setbacks and contains a buildable lot.
So essentially, that would be a variance.
Well, in this case, they are asking for the exception for the approval of this project. To the extent that any variances or other entitlements and permits are needed for an actual build-out, they'd do that at a later time.
It's within your present discretion to approve such a configuration.
Any other question? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Like to comment? No? It's not. Okay, close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the commission? I have no pleasure.
Let's- I make a motion, we approve minor subdivision 1235-16 with all the requirements and all the conditions to be met before the recording of the map. Is that, and all the findings?
Can we
Was it
attach
a
13
second?
to that? Because you're talking about 16 now. Can you attach 13?
Oh, yeah, and attached,
The conditions and approval of 13, that they be met before 16? Is that what you're saying?
no, there's going to be all the requirements. This new conditions take all the other past conditions into consideration.
That's correct.
Yes.
And so they've already been incorporated. So the
They're
conditions
incorporated
that
in
are
this one already.
before you are the full conditions that would be necessary to meet. So you wouldn't need to talk about the minor subdivision 13 since you are considering only minor subdivision 1235-16, which incorporates those. And I do believe that there had also been a request for the commission to grant an exception for the depth to width ratio for proposed parcel 1, which you may decide to include in your recommendation as well, your motion.
Okay,
Okay.
got it.
And planning commission to grant an exception to the depth and width lot ratio proposal, parcel 1 following 23.25.001 A and B.
I second that.
Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So moved. Okay, moving on. Minor subdivision 1246-17.
Chairman, I will recuse myself, and since I am the owner of the property, I can take my place beside the engineer in the audience. Correct?
Okay.
Come on over to the other side.
Go to the other side.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, just in case. There we go.
So this evening, we're pleased to present minor subdivision 1246-17 at 870 School Road. And in this slide, you can see the context. It's rugged, irregular terrain. The shape of School Road runs along some of that terrain. And you can see it's not within the San Andreas Fault Zone that runs along Anzar Road. You can see at the bottom here the intersection of 101 Searle Road and Anzar. School Road is a narrow, small road that runs, it kind of zigzags back and forth up through the side of the hill. And you can see also the scale of the parcels here. So along the south here, right at this section, right up there, there are a few smaller parcels at 5 or under, and a bunch of they seem to cluster at 5 or under, right around that area. Then maybe 8 to 12 acres in a couple of spots. And then, you can see off to the left here, there's some approximately the size of the current subject parcel too. So you've got some variability, but they seem to cluster at the appropriate sizes that would generally be subdivided too. And here you see a little translucent aerial view that gives you a sense of the topography and landscape. So this is the driveway right here. School Road runs like this. You've got the savanna, pasture, scattered live oaks, or savanna or grassland with scattered live oaks. And the driveway loops up here, little grade here, but it flattens out all the way around here. So this is a bench or level area between the two homes. You've got one primary and a secondary here with some accessory buildings. The water storage tanks are roughly here. This will be a shared access point, a shared driveway, and I believe the well is around here. But you can see that better on the large hard copy map that you've got. So we've got a 24.7 something large parcel, and they're going to split off right along here, 5 acres, just to separate the two residences. So before, right now you've got 2 homes, and afterwards you'll have 2 homes as well. So there's no development, no intensification, and no construction proposed at all. This is a rural zoning, and in this district, you've got low-intensity residences, and in areas that are primarily not, I think the way that is phrased is uses, it's not primarily suited to agriculture. So you could run livestock along some of these hills, but it's really irregular, hard to get to. And some of the lot sizes are a little bit small for simply pasturing livestock. And so that mitigates against agricultural uses. And the other thing is that the land use general plan notes is that where there are no access to public infrastructure, lower density development is the norm and preferred, and that's the objective, and what's allowed in the area. So this is the second residence that will be included in the 5-acre parcel, and it's where the common access driveway terminates at the end of that bench that you saw in the previous slide. And this is actually a scan of the large-scale hard copy map that you've got that was distributed, and you can see the well. And they've got easements drawn around the common access driveway. The water lines, here are the storage tanks right up here in that corner, as mentioned. The well is over here. And so they've got some easements around the water lines. And, of course, the easement around the road is for this particular, the secondary residence, which doesn't need it to get to its own water tanks. And that's really the key aspects of this map is that easements have been drawn for the facilities, water easement, water and access that will be shared between the two neighboring properties, assuming this is approved. This is the driveway leading over to the where it leads over to that secondary residence. It runs between the primary and secondary right here, so it's fairly level at that bench. On that bench, for CEQA. We normally, I think we're looking at 15061B3. The general rule at CEQA does not apply, where you're just drawing a line on a map. The project is so small, so simple, and not involved that an exemption or a determination that CEQA just doesn't apply, I think, is reasonable. This, although we're citing in the PowerPoint here the minor land divisions, it doesn't apply because it's not in an urbanized zone. But if we do an analysis full build-out, now we have one parcel with 2 homes with the potential for 2 ADUs. If you approve this minor subdivision, you'll have plus 1 parcel. Plus 1 parcel, still 2 homes, and still have the exact same potential for 2 accessory dwelling units, should someone at some point in the future choose to build out.
Thank you.
So there's no change before and after.
Good CEQA documentation.
Okay. And 15303, of course, has new construction or conversion of small structures is categorically exempt. Under A, one single-family residence or a second dwelling unit would be categorically exempt. And I think we can probably leave it right there and delete B, but Section B. So I think we're good on the CEQA score. The staff does recommend that we take the staff report, the analysis, the recitals, and the findings in evidence, and as along with the conditions of approval, the special and standard conditions of approval, consistent with the general plan, zoning ordinance, and CEQA, and we recommend approval of minor subdivision MS 1246-17. This is the road out front, school road.
Thank you, Mr. Felsing. Back to the chair.
The only other thing that I didn't mention was we did have two edits of two conditions of approval. They do not substantially change anything. One is just saying we'd like easements to be created, and it fleshes that out a little bit. It's already in what you've got. And number two is conformance to plan, and it just makes sure that when we say see attachment 1, in the uploaded staff report and resolution recitals, we've got an attachment there that's an early draft of a site map. And what we've got in the hard copy that you see there, or that you've been passed around to you, that hard copy is the revised tentative parcel map that includes the easements. So it's got the detail that we're looking for that make it approvable, basically. But we wanted to make sure that the number 2 conformance to plan was unassailable in citing the correct map. So they're relatively uninvolved, but we submit those for your approval or consideration, I should say. Thank you.
Through the chair, can I please clarify? Mr. Felsing, are you indicating that the hard copy that was, I'm going to show you my packet, in the packet with the purple front already has the changes that you are describing made in it, and it differs from what was uploaded on the Novus website? Is that what I understand?
I think I'm saying not quite the opposite, but something a little bit different. So in the resolution, attachment 1, if you look closely at it, it's really just a site map, a first draft. And we'd like enough detail to meet our requirements for submittal of a tentative map if we're going to have something approved.
So are you suggesting that attachment 1 is going to, should the commission make a motion and approve this, that attachment 1 is going to be switched out with something different?
I understand that the large-scale tentative map has been passed around. Is that correct? So you should have a...
The answer is yes. The staff recommendation is that the motion requested of the Planning Commission is to incorporate the 3 things in front of you, the 2 modified conditions, as well as that exhibit at the full-size map, which will be reduced and replace this older version. So this...
And just really briefly, the reason for editing that condition of approval is so that no mistakes can be made down the line. Yes. Everyone knows it's in the record.
So to the commission, if there is going to be a recommendation and a motion, if that motion, if you want it to incorporate those 2 changes to the conditions of approval, as well as to incorporate the other map, if that could be made part of your recommendation through your motion, please go ahead and do so. If you need any assistance with it, I'm happy to help.
Okay, through the chair. Can we take it back to the CEQA part about the ADUs?
Yes, sir.
Got a question about that. Yeah, so you're saying, wouldn't that you've got like one APN right now and a house and a secondary unit? Mm-hmm. But once you split this, you can have, each one of those could now be a main house with a secondary unit. So you can actually double your habitation if you choose to do so. But also you have limitations of water and sewer, right?
Correct.
In order to do that.
Correct, Chairman, Commissioner Pierce,
Okay,
correct.
so there is some limitation there. but it seems to me that you could actually double this. Now, in that area, I'm not worried about that either. It's not a big deal, but I just want to make it clear so I understand what you can and can't do.
You know, that has been an effect of the state enabling and being much more permissive with the second unit laws, where many communities go, what? You know, we had single-family residential zones here, and now the state's saying that local agencies are more hands-off if somebody proposes a 1,200 square foot unit with or without parking, not restricted to seniors or affordable housing, but that they just can. In fact, the state goes as far as to say that the local municipalities are supposed to even entertain minor variances and things to be helpful so those things fit on those properties.
Right.
So a lot of local agencies don't have the minor variance for just, we didn't meet setbacks, but we've got the cover from the state whose purpose is to provide secondary housing. And so all we were trying to say here is that, this is a line between two existing residences.
Yeah, that's all this is.
And when one builds a single-family residence, there's often an exemption, unless, there's just something egregious. It's right over a river, it's through a tree, or some other protected resource of which would flag us for a deeper environmental review.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to be clear on that. So,
Yeah.
because essentially all we're doing is drawing a line between a couple of houses.
Correct.
One lot's a little bigger than the other.
Correct.
Nothing's really changed.
Right, and there's no proposal in front of us, and one could,
Right.
you could, kind of spin a little bit and say, well, they have 13 extra acres that they're not subdividing at this time. Does 13, or let's what if it was 15? Does 15 divide by 5 end up with 3 new parcels that we need? Well, there's hillside slope constraints, there's water constraints, there's tree constraints, there's beautification, there's all these things that are just basically not a factor right now because they're not on the table.
Understood. The only other question, just for historic significance, would be how deep is this well and how many gallons per minute do you get out there on School Road? Because it's kind of a really bad area for water, right? Please.
And please state your name for the record.
That's just a historic question because we'll probably get other projects out there sooner or later, too.
I think I am extremely lucky in the well that I put in about, 18 years ago. It was found by an old fellow named Shiketti, who used to work for another old-timer in town. And we went down to 350 feet and found 17 gallons a minute.
Wow.
And that's what a 24-hour pump test required for the lot split.
That's good.
And I say again, very rare in my area. So don't tell my neighbors.
Sell them water.
You okay with things?
Okay.
Public comment?
Any more questions?
None?
I guess the applicant has no comment. Okay, back to the commission.
Oh, and
I don't really have a comment, but I had a speaker card, and I just wanted to say if there's any other questions, I was here to answer them, but I think Valerie answered her own questions quite well. So,
Thank you.
close the public hearing.
Okay, I'll make a
Close
motion.
the public hearing.
Close the public hearing.
Okay, ready for a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I'd move that we approve minor subdivision MS 1246-17 through the adoption of the draft resolution findings and standards and the special conditions of approval consistent with the County of San Benito General Plan zoning ordinance. Also, the attachment to the conditions of approval 23 and 25 and 2 and 14, as well as the new larger map that we're going to call attachment 2.
It will be the new one.
Okay, the new one. I didn't want to
Good Lord,
confuse
Matt.
things. Okay.
Thank you. I think that does capture staff's recommendation.
That
Okay, the
everything?
motion and second, all in favor?
Oh, second.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
No moves.
Move
Very much.
adjournment?
Did you make it in time for your ball game? Oh.
I'll move it for adjournment.
I second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This is adjourned.
I'm sorry, on the motion, it said something about conditions 23 and 25, or did I hear that wrong?
Yeah, no, it was this handout that they had made these sort of condition changes and
Yeah,
such.
but I only had
So-
conditions changes for 2 and 14.
Okay.
I concur at the top of that header. One is for the first subdivision, the first minor subdivision. So we're only looking at, do you have both copies with you?
The header 20-17.
Yep.
No, 1246.
You want to see mine?
So the one with the red in it
Okay.
is
That's number 2.
1246. That's one that's the minor subdivision we're working on. So numbers 2 and 14.
Oop,
The other sheet of paper,
that was 16.
right, is for 16.
My bad. Let's amend that.
That's all right.
If we could reopen the item for minor subdivision 124617 to have a new motion,
For a friendly amendment.
an amendment to your motion, that's fine.
Okay, could I make an amendment to my motion to exclude the...
Hold on 1 second. Mr. Chair, could you please reopen item minor subdivision 1246-17?
Okay, so we have to reopen the meeting.
Yes.
All right. So now we're going to address 1246-17.
And now I make a friendly amendment to my motion to delete, and it dropped on the floor. Was that 24, 25?
2320.
2325.
23, 25 of MS-16
Of the other map, yeah.
for the other, map. So my second, that's a friendly amendment. Do I get a friendly amendment from,
Yes, I agree.
okay, all,
Okay. And motion and a second, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Re-adjourn now.
Thanks,
I'll
Al.
move for adjournment
Adjourn.
to
All in
the
favor?
June
Still doesn't
20th.
like it.
To June 20th.
No, I said, no, I'm good. I'm sorry, I just said I'm sorry for having to.
Oh, I thought you had some other objection.
No, thanks for adding that in. I thought it was part of that packet.
Good. Adjourn, yeah.
I move for adjournment.
Well, re-adjourn.
June.
You're going to uphold the adjournment from before, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, good night.